Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this morning's episode. The title is Fixed Ideological Systems Behave Like Self-Replicating Genes. I noticed something interesting that really human beings, our attention really goes as creatures, as emergent eyes in the realm. Our attention goes towards objects and subjects. And so the gene we perceive as the source of the object and its development, that it is in some sense self-replicating. That means cells group up pretty much a sort of copy paste into higher evolution, you can say, as if the cell is cloning itself. It is in some sense leading to more of itself. Now, I've said fixed ideological systems. There's a certain context I mean that. What to say? Okay, so just this point that the gene self-replicates, and now certain ideological systems, they also self-replicate. A very common example, let me first say it this way, that ideological systems, so I look at systems, any sort of system, it doesn't matter what, and pretty much the basic thing you're looking at it, is the system moving or is it not? This is one of the most basic, I would say, a basic axis you can perceive any system in, based on what is happening in it. So I would say we have an ideological system, a sort of sequence of subjects that lead to some sort of internal image of a landscape, an internal image-based landscape. Now, a fixed ideological system is an ideological system that is, let's say, just like cells that self-replicate, genes that self-replicate. We can say that the subject self-replicates as well, and we have, let's say, two types of sorry, I'm unnecessarily confusing this. Pretty much, we have an ideological system. An ideological system is like an instruction. It's like a program. Now we have self-replicating cells. Ideological systems replicate themselves in people. And when I've said fixed ideological system, an example I thought was any ideological system that doesn't change. That means religious ideology goes in there. You can say constants in scientific thought also go in there. I perceive certain constants to be very similar to like beliefs in some sense, because we're saying on some level the universe is entropic, the universe is changing, space is moving faster than light, yet at the same time we are keeping constant values to things and feeling like it all works out. You know, perhaps the observable we have kind of tweaked with the observable universe a little, but there is so much that we cannot just declare as a constant. That means for me, it doesn't matter you do it through numerical language or you do it through non-numerical language. Like it's like it doesn't matter if you believe the whole of reality is 0 1. You know, imagine you're a machine. What I'm trying to say is that ideological systems, they are self-replicating through people, and in some sense it takes away the person's life. So if there's a fixed ideological system, it's not that it takes away the person's life, it takes away the person's attention to the novelty of their own life. What that means is, imagine you're the son of a carpenter, and you're the son of a carpenter, you know, and your ancestors have all been making tables and chairs and all this, and suddenly you've come and you're like, I want to be a blacksmith, I don't want to be a carpenter. Or let's say you want to be a Shaolin monk, you know. Let's say you want to be a Shaolin you want to be a Shaolin monk, you don't want to be like a carpenter's son, you know, or anything else. My whole point is that the behavior from the past is similar to a subjective, the fixed ideological system, in some sense occupying the person's new ways of living. So what I mean by this is that, just like how that you can say that that kid who was in a lineage of carpenters felt a sort of weight and restriction of trying to change, trying to experience through a different self. Pretty much religious ideology, or any ideology that is asking you to change, but the idea doesn't want to change itself, the ideological system doesn't want to change itself, or has left no room for change, that's a self-replicating ideological system. What does that mean? That means it's an idea that it doesn't matter what you think, what anybody thinks, it's just going to keep growing and growing and growing. Why? Because it doesn't need novelty to justify it. It doesn't need new circumstances to take another look, you know? And for me, I could tell you my relationship with language, going from being like a kid who couldn't speak to someone who now I feel I'm seeing more than speech. I'm seeing a dimension to language that is just geometrical potential, really. It's our language, it's our words that have made us feel we are chess pieces on a chessboard. And pretty much when it comes to ideological systems, really, either the subject is in the driver's seat or the object is in the driver's seat. That means either you are experiencing a moment where the object component to the moment is moving first and then subjects are arising, or subjects are moving first then objects arise. An example would be like when we look at evolution, there had to be a body, then we were like, okay, this body has a mind, you know. So there had to be the object first, then the sort of subjective tag along of the story of the self in a world. But and an example of a subject being in the driver's seat first to an object would be like somebody looking at a target. Let's say you're an archer and you're looking at a target and you let go of the bow. And that is technically letting go of the bow is a subject. In your mind, you saw the subjective outcome of the moment before the objective embodiment of it. excuse me. To continue, pretty much this subject-object relationship and object-subject relationship. Honestly, I would say people on the planet can be defined by this. We either have OS or SO. We have SO people and OS people, really, as individuals when we're looking at individual consciousness. Really, if I take this idea of the subject-object even a bit more deeply right now, I saw another angle to it. It would be probably 4 modes, where one mode we have a subjective self in an objective world. We have a subjective world in an, let us say, okay, here, I'll say it. We have a subjective self in an objective world. We have an objective self in a subjective world. We have a subjective world inside an this is just too many probabilities here. Okay, so either we're an object, a subject, like the idea, a single subject in a world that is just purely made of objects. Either we're a single object in a world made of purely subjects, which means unknown, and or we are a subjective self in a subjective world. There we go. Subjective world. Or we are an objective self in an objective world. These are the four possibilities. These are the 4 possibilities of human reality, and in a way to kind of connect it to what I'm saying here, if we're treating an ideological ideas as like self-replicating genes or okay, let's treat an idea as a self-replicating story. Wow, why don't we call it that? Rather than it's a self-replicating gene, it's a self-replicating maybe I shouldn't say story, maybe I should say self-replicating subject. Self-replicating event, perfect. It's a self-replicating event. It could be that we think we're doing new things, but it could be that we're doing everything our mind knows, but it's like the mind is doing it instant, so it doesn't show. Anyways, I will say this once more if anybody wants to write it down. Subjective self in an objective world. Objective self in a subjective world. Subjective self in a subjective world. Objective self in an objective world. Objective self in an objective world means objects and just objects. Literally, it's before we had consciousness. This would be pretty much the body of an animal, but no consciousness, no conscious individualism for the animal. That means the animal doesn't know it's an animal. It doesn't even know the world is here. That's when an object self is in an object-based world. Now, we can't be objects because we're defining objects as inanimate. We're suggesting the potential, like scientifically, or from the view of biology, it's like object doesn't have life. Oh my God, after a very long time, a unique complex organism arose. That means the cells behaved in a way where it was like light every day was giving instructions like keep going forth, cells, and anyways, We're either an object in a world that is an object. We're a subject in a world that is a subject. This is really the inner realms. Purely your inner realms. And an object inside an object, that is purely the outer realms. When you feel like a subject to yourself in a subjective world, this can lead to two places. In your outer realms, you become a madman. You become a person who doesn't see the outside world, you know. Or from the inner realms, the subjective self and the subjective world, they are godhood. That means you can say sometimes violent people, angry people, they are for a nanosecond feeling like a god of their own mind. You know, I remember seeing this video. I'll tell you an example of this. There was this very beautiful woman standing at an ATM, and she's waiting in line, and there's someone in front of her who's at the ATM. She's in line. Then behind her, there's these two guys. Like there's the first guy, and then there's the second guy after the woman, right? Now what happens is the second guy and the first guy and the second guy don't know each other. You know, after behind the girl, they're all standing in line at the ATM. They don't know each other. So the second guy is a bit mischievous, and what he does is he goes and he, you know, hits the girl in the behind, you know. And what happens is that the girl turns around angry. The beautiful woman turns around angry and slaps the guy behind her. And the second guy in the back is just laughing, you know? And so that beautiful woman in that moment was so angry. Her mind had, because of what had happened was so off, she automatically concluded it was exactly the person behind her. And she turns around and she slaps the first guy in the face. You know, and it's after that moment where the second guy who's laughing suddenly stops and sees the first guy, turns to the second guy, and this time the second guy starts running away. So that's an example. That's an example of the subjective self and the subjective world being set. That means she was convinced it was the guy behind her who had done it. But it was the guy behind her, you know? And so that's the nature of the world. We're not machines. Unless we have advanced technology hovering beside us that could double check everything, we have to have patience. We have to pretty much have patience before we have the precision. Patience before precision allows precision to become precision in its own time. And speaking of time, if I remember this correctly, the ancient Greeks had a sense of time, that there were two types of time. Now, one can choose to see these two types of time as if, again, static and dynamic, but I'll tell you it's not. I wouldn't say this is where it's a bit difficult to tell the exact implication. But in ancient Greece, you can say there was two types of time. There was kairos, and there was chronos, I believe. Guys, let me double check this. Yeah, chronos and kairos. There we go. Yeah. So, two types of time. Chronos This is in ancient Greece. Chronos and kairos. Now, the word kairos, it comes from weather. The way they imply it's, I'll tell you, chronos is chronological time. It means past, present, future. This notion of like we started somewhere, we're going somewhere. Kairos was a sort of time that was momentary based. And so as you could see the word kairos implying weather, as if like the weather of the moment. That means it's like a certain time set just for how the moment is. You could say kairos isn't just the present moment, but it is time inspired by the present, by, you can say, the current circumstance. So in some sense we have a sense of time. You're late for work, then then you have a sense of time where it is just one moment's activity. So you can say there is a sense of time for our personality, which is dual, and then there's a sense of time for our presence, which is non-dual. So you can say kairos is the experience of time for a non-dual moment of experience. And chronos is the experience of time through a dual personality, dualized personality. And so I would say for the ideological systems, all ideological systems relate to time. So the fixed and dynamism is pretty much chronos kairos. So when I'm saying fixed ideological system, yeah, it would be kairos. It would be where time is either being dismissed or being set. You see, we have to realize it's like objects are awakening to a world that they have for the longest time treated like, oh my God, I'm an object in a world filled with objects. Here, I could even touch this table, you know? So there's this object, but then we're like, wait a minute, where is the object knowing that it's in a world that is also an object? And that is a subject. So technically, the objective self and the objective world, we can never know it. We can never know we are an object. That is, I would say, the same as when I tell the listeners this term I coined, the language threshold. Right now we are like our bodies are wearing clothing and our minds are wearing ideology. And if the ideological system entertained by the attention is fixed, the ideological system doesn't grow. It doesn't grow. And if it grows, it's going to be sin. For me, honestly, religion is time travel. It is literally a pattern. It's not just religion. It's all language taken for reality. It doesn't matter if it's in a religious book or in any other book or whatever. Just any moment a person feels they are an idea, the design of that idea has locked you in. And so, to be playful with language is really, I would say, the smoothest way to pilot through it. You take language seriously, you start fragmenting your life. You start fragmenting your psyche, right? And the only way the fragmentation of the psyche can be singular, that means, let's say that you have a person who, okay, I witnessed this in downtown Toronto, for example. Okay, there was a time I was there for a year and a half, just, anyways, long story short, I would be in downtown Toronto, and I was attending school there, to be honest. And what it was is, in the breaks, I would have a cigarette and I would look at society, right? And like I will tell you, I saw like the defeated and the successful walk the same streets, and I saw some things that made me ashamed that I am a member of a species that doesn't see itself, you know? But anyways, pretty much I saw someone shout at a building. I had never seen that. That somebody was looking at it, like literally the person was shouting at like the stone of a building, you know? And so I was really just smoking my cigarette and wondering what's going on there in the psyche of the person. Like what has happened? I mean, and then first it was like a checklist. I'm like, okay, the person's physiologically impaired, right? There's some physiological disturbances. Maybe the person hasn't slept. Maybe the person hasn't. Maybe the person hasn't slept. Maybe the person hasn't ate. Maybe the person hasn't been treated like a human being. And that's chaotic too. That's as bad as not having food to eat or water to drink, losing your humanity, you know? That means we have to really make sure to keep, we are on some levels mysterious animals, think of it. And so if we are not if we don't communicate like a human being, and if we are not communicated to by other human beings, over time there's a disassociation with just the human context, right? And so then there comes, if the person I'll tell you, there was a hero for me. Like some people, their hero is like Superman or something. For me, there was this man, this old man who lived by this bridge where a lot of people would go to use the wrong way. And this person, this old man would go with his dog at the end of night and find these people who were on the verge of like making a decision towards non-existence. And he would go and talk to them, to these people who were suicidal and were suffering. And he would just go talk to them. As if a lot of people, we don't realize it, but our nature is to serve. Whether it's good or evil, but the nature of the human being is to give from itself. We're like a battery. And so this person would go and talk to these people who were on the verge of non-existence, and he would invite them to his house for tea. And then the person would cheer up, and they wouldn't make an unnecessary decision in an unnecessary moment. And so what it was that we don't realize, we are not a fixed character in a story. Our emotions can instantly make us feel like a different character. You go talk to someone beautifully, you could see they brighten up. You go talk to someone in a way where you're reducing them, you can totally see. It's as if they go on, their shield comes up. And pretty much that person saved 200 people from entering non-existence by treating them like a human being. That is true advanced communication level, where you're realizing, okay, whatever is said between people, we're still human beings here. Everybody. Everybody is a human being. And to be human means not to be a perfect machine. So technically, everybody is prone to error. So one of the stupidest things that I could tell you human beings can do is take mistakes so seriously that they deny their future. That means forgiveness is forgiveness is smart. Forgiveness is smart because we're not perfect creatures. That means if you want a perfect destiny in this life, like, good luck. For me, it's like a surfer in the ocean wanting the perfect wave. I mean, like you can wait enough and catch a good wave, but it's not like every time perfect wave, you know? Okay, welcome everyone. My attention just came. My attention came to the chat section. Welcome, Pete, Aziz. I don't know what you're saying, Pete. Like, I feel like half your question's missing. What is manipulated by her? Like, if you're commenting on something I said, I can't like rewind back to that exact statement. But Aziz says, Mr. Within, you have the idea where the person is known and the world is unknown. Does that relate? See, the person is known like a candle lights up a dark room. Like, it's that kind of knowing. Okay? In front of my eyes, it's like my eyes aren't like I can't see what's going on in the Andromeda galaxy. I can't even see what's happening on the other side of the planet. Do you know? So when it comes to knowledge of the outer realms, it's literally like limitations. It's like suddenly there's this hallway and there's some giant metal doors that have just like literally machine doors that have just come from the top and have just blocked entrances, right? It's literally, I honestly feel there is a sort of we are like a child species in a cradle which we cannot understand yet. Imagine a young child. Imagine yourself like as a young kid in a cradle, right? So you have no concept of the cradle yet, you know. But the cradle is there. The laws and regulations of nature are there before the child can even open its eyes to a world that's here. And so this idea of self-replication is so key, because if you think about that, we don't actually see people, we see all that we have experienced just through them. That's technically self-replication. That means when a person, let's say you're sitting down and somebody comes and says something and you get an impression of them, a first impression of them, right? That first impression of them is not them, is you. That first impression, because we don't have the other person's eyes, we are creating who they could be to us. That means whenever you see someone, whatever impression you have of them, that's just think of it as like one option in a Who Wants to Be a Millionaire kind of question round. That means nobody is ever just their words or the action of one moment. If nature was just one moment, it would be a photo. You know, if we wanted to judge things, if we really wanted to judge things on just one thing, life would have to be a photograph. And that's really what a fixed ideological system is. I would say like an ideological system is more like a film, but it's like a limited film. It's not an endlessly changing and updating film. It's fixed. It's as if the ideology has an ego. Literally, like let's say every word is like an idea, okay? And so ideas, they correlate into in a system, as if like different letters of an alphabet fit into becoming words. Do you know? I would say a fixed ideological system is like a box on a person's head. A dynamic ideological system would be like you put holes on the box. Now you're moving. You could at least see the future a little. You know, see in front of you a little. Pete, you're speaking like Yoda in the chat section. I don't know what's. I'm joking. I would say the most intelligent thing our species can do right now is to literally pause history like a video game. And imagine all the teachers in all educational systems. They just went to the students and they're like, "Dear students, sorry, but we have to tell you a truth. All students on the planet, we have to tell you a truth as the teachers." And what is that truth? Language, or I wouldn't say language, but linguistic meaning was a discovery. Language, which is defining the face of our minds, was a discovery. But what was moving? Like, you see, a belief system, that was like we discovered a way to hold reality as a sort of conceptual format, and we're like, yeah, I believe this, you believe that, you know. It's like, give me a break. What are we doing? Believing, disbelieving something that we can't even see fully. That means it's like it's like trying to define. It's like, for me sometimes, it's like trying to define empty space with matter. It's impossible. Do you know? It's like, it's just conceptually the way those words have a meaning, it becomes impossible. And so what it means is that there is no such thing as knowledge. There's just sight and divided sight. The human story, first of all, is way more mysterious than we're accepting it, I would say. You see, in a science fiction novel of mine, which was set in the year 5025, I shared that the government was called the Enlightened Society, this idea. And the Enlightened Society was this government that had taken place by the first artist being actually coming into power. That means, imagine a nation. Usually politicians are from backgrounds of law and even certain sciences, you know, in different backgrounds, even recently business. So it's like politicians have different backgrounds, but imagine a politician that was an artist that came to power, and what did this artist do? This politician was bored of how ugly the nations looked. And suddenly one nation, the politician that was an artist, makes the nation so beautiful that for the first time all the other nations are like, wait a minute, we're not going to let this nation be more beautiful than us. And the world starts competing over which nation is more incredible, which nation is more efficient and beautiful, right? And free. And so if we could just have the competition over greatness, collective greatness, rather than individual greatness, we literally fix the system. Just care for the victory of your species, and whatever happens, it's like a victory of yourself because you're a part of your species. That means if your world becomes more advanced, you automatically become more advanced. If one person from another part of the world discovers something, suddenly we all can access it. Do you know? So technically, we start off as individual objects who pinpoint into a, I don't know, subjective focal point, but we are really, nature is like, all right, when are these guys going to realize they're like all energy? You can say it is all technically an energetic presence. The laws of nature are like in their own room, that they don't have personality or anything, but it's like in a room, in another dimension of perceiving the laws of nature, you're seeing human beings with free will and, spontaneous autonomy. of movement. So we can just out of nowhere suddenly change direction and move. And this implies that we're actually antennas. That's the I don't know how there this word I'm saying antenna. This is the closest thing. This is I see no other way for secular culture to be able to access the multidimensional unless it chooses to perceive the brain as an antenna. Right now, the brain is like a belief system. It's a declaration of limited potential. Sorry, not limited potential. It's a declaration of a sort of set frame, a set framework. But if you see it as an antenna, then it doesn't matter. It's like the signal has nothing to do with the antenna. That means that it could be like whatever kind of antenna, but the signal could be great. Or the signal could be bad, It depends on what kind of signal is out there. And so imagine we stopped like taking ourselves so seriously as just purely just a bunch of letters. Like everybody's a bunch of letters right now. It's like no human beings has been like, hey guys, isn't it weird we're all made of letters, like ideologically? It's like the body is made of self-replicating genes, and the mind is made from self-replicating um, self-replicating I wanted to say events again, but I feel there's something off there. It's like okay, let's say we are okay, let's say the gene is replicating itself. Now let's say space is replicating itself as the mind. So this may sound strange, but I think actually the mind is not cannot be it's not playing a it's like our it's like our body is here, but our mind can never be, because it's what's seeing the here, like it's observing the here. The observer is not what is being observed. It cannot be to itself conceptually. Guys, what am I saying? Self-replicating event. I should say just a self-replicating idea. So in front of your eyes, you're a self-replicating object. Behind your eyes, you're a self-replicating subject. Yeah. And really, what has the human being been doing after the ability to speak? The moment we have the ability to speak, it's like it's all a relay game. We're just passing the torch down. This passing the torch down is like replicating how a story is like savoring or like holding an event, a truth inside an event. So we can say stories are like they're like capsules, and if the person can open the moral of them, they see what's inside. And what's inside is I would say an experience which comes down to a unique way where a self moved in the world. So stories are just a database of movement. All of human knowledge is an archive of movement in stillness. It's incredible. It's incredible how right now I'm speaking, it's like our speech is sound. Like it all returns back. It comes from the silence, returns to the silence. And it's as if like we don't have a word for this. um, but I would say it's just like we have silence and noise. We have life and the void. Or sorry, silence. We have noise and silence, and then we have life and void. So similar to how these words, like they arise, we have arose. And it's next level. Like if you fast forward literally like a film, literally it's just endless creatures standing up. Can you imagine? Like, can you imagine history just fast forwarded like a film? It would just scare you. You'd be like, what is going on? It's as if like creaturehood is being lifted from the earth into display. And of course, the ultimate view, where you can either follow an ideological system and have that filter and then move, or just move and directly experience, and from the direct experience the ideological system arising. I think that's so much healthier. You know what it means? It means literally a person who believes in something is like a hyena, and a person who experiences something is like a lion. The lion has to hunt the food itself. The hyena or coyote or whatever, like that animal just eats whatever is around. There's a difference. One is moving in the domain of its will. The other doesn't care if it moves itself, if something else moves itself. Like, there isn't that discretion. So let us fix our ideological systems by not having them be fixed. And what I mean by that is not being limited. It's honestly like, think of how in old folklore, or even in Abrahamic religions, there was this idea of possession. Like most religious texts, their acknowledgement of the realm is multidimensional. That means it doesn't matter what they believe on the God or not, all religious texts entertain a multidimensional universe. Now, there are mysteries acquainted to that, but it doesn't matter if you go to, in some sense, really that's the common theme. That's one thing the stories of the world have kept preserved, that it's a multidimensional setting. Now, the truth of it could be singular, or the truth of it could be non-dual, or the truth of it could be some, I don't know, face of the faceless or whatnot. There was this yogi named Osho. He had this quote I saw online. He says, if you, let's say if you, let's say the human being picks a flower to give it, let's say you were to give a flower to your girlfriend or something. It's like Osho was saying, when you cut the flower for whatever justification of beauty, you disconnect, you kill the beauty by taking it, you know? And so the strategy should be, instead of taking flowers for your sweetheart, you should take your sweetheart to the garden. That way the flowers get to live and you get to see more flowers. So there is that thing that also, I think it's the same with belief systems. And if the belief system declares a shape, and just like the religious view of the idea of possession, ideological possession is very serious. Ideological possession means concepts programmed your destiny, literally, because the person chooses where their attention, like a bird, lands on. You could choose, like sometimes when I give these talks, I feel like my attention is like on a branch. Then I jump to another branch. Then at some point in the talk, I'm like from the top of the sky looking down at the forest. Then at another point, I'm like the bird is skydiving into an ocean or something. Like, so war, peace, all of it is communication. And it's how much people have wanted to stay a certain idea, or how much they were willing to be like, okay, what other idea could there be? Isaac Asimov, I said this in the previous talk. He says violence is the last refuge of the incompetent. That means the reason we have war is because we're incompetent. Because we're literally like amateurs. We're amateur creatures. That's why we have war. It's like a sign of an amateur species. Like literally, we're amateurs right now as creatures. I don't know what to say. The galaxy's like, look at these amateurs. But if we transcend war and somehow maintain an ability to have more excitement, let's say somebody was like, hey, all those people, let's say you were someone who liked violence, let's say. Let's say you were someone who liked violence in an advanced civilization. That advanced civilization would be like, okay, you like violence, sure. You can be violent, but not in the outer realms. Maybe you have the freedom to have violent thoughts. Like you see a violent movie, you have the thought of violent thought in your head. You have freedom to have violent thoughts, for example. Do you know? But you don't have the freedom to let that violence in the outer realms. And in an advanced civilization, that violence would go into cyberspace. So if two people wanted to fight, they would literally imagine. I mean, I'm just kind of like improvising the context here. Like imagine two people who wanted to fight and they each had, I don't know, they had these unique watches. And so when two people wanted to street fight, they would just point the circles of their watches to each other, and then suddenly they would go into a cyberspace realm where literally like a video game, they could choose a map, they could choose a sort of appearance, and they could really fight with like next level, like so in cyberspace you could fight. You could literally be a dragon and fight someone. Do you know what I mean? You could be like a giant robot and fight someone. So that means two people fighting at a bar, they suddenly somehow they go into cyberspace and they're like a dragon and a giant robot fighting. And literally in the outer realms, like you could say the person's hands are moving or something, but they're not hitting each other. They're hitting the idea of each other, because from the beginning their issue came from the idea of each other. That means really violence never has a physical solution. Sorry, never has a physical source. It's not caused by just pure physical. It's not conscious violence. It's a subjective push. It's something that subjectively moves from within the. And so that's the thing, that the violence is unnecessary to be in the outer realms. What are we showing off, like kung fu skills till the end of time? Like, do you know, like in the outer realms, it's a place really for minds to live. That means it's like uh, there's no point punching the air. You'll never hit the air. you know Aristotle has this quote. He says it's the sign of an educated mind to entertain an idea without accepting it. It's that state of mind where the most advanced human being will arise. Not a human being that still emotions get pushed around by words, by sounds. That's when your free will activates. Only when you know the freedom you are. That means there has to be something before anything else, and it's from that is coming the first emotion upon everything of your, let's say, your total inner landscape. because it's really attention driven. That means sometimes when I speak, I feel attention is a sword. And literally, I like raise my weapon and imagine like throwing a spear. That's pretty tribal, but like, I'm it's literally something. The attention is wielded, and so if we can wield our attention free from ideological systems that are not conscious of the living. That means a dynamic ideological system technically is never one kind of ideological system. It's endlessly updating. It's like a program that endlessly updates, you know? And you can say like certain ideological systems that are fixed, like for example, religious ideology or whatever, a certain ideology in law, for example. Or someone can even dispute that the dictionary is a fixed ideological system, a collection of massive fixed ideological systems. In the chat section, it said the kids will have to separate their future from our past. First of all, incredible for noticing that. I'm actually kind of surprised. Yeah, that's the task. That means the task is not to save the past. The past is already past. You know? The point is that imagine right now, there's gonna be like billions of advanced communicators opening their eyes on this planet. Now, what do we want to leave them with? Imagine you are, you are like, you're an Olympian, and you're passing the torch of human consciousness, to its more advanced stages. That means really, like, I would say parents should try to not have good children or bad children, have advanced children. And to be advanced means you can't have imagine a person's brain has a limited range of attention, has like a USB has a certain amount of space. Now imagine all of that space being filled by what the past is telling you. Do you know? And so you can choose how to fill up that space. And that's true. I would say that's true wit. That's true. That's a really intelligent person, where they are aware of the space of where they're aware how their attention is being the space and what enters the space. Just like you're driving and you turn on your phone and you press the Wi-Fi button and you see all the Wi-Fis of the neighborhood, You imagine you're like driving, and you just see like just all the Wi-Fis you pass across, So what can I say? We are masked in ideology, and our true face is, I would say, beyond conception. So literally, we have to allow the future generations to have a fresh start by allowing the voice of the past to go to itself. So I would say the strategy I'm trying to implement personally in my efforts here is really to put a mirror in front of the past, so the past speaks to itself and the future gets a new start. And it's not that the past speaks to itself, it's just that the past, upon looking in a mirror, will have to change itself, automatically becoming the future. That means anything you put a mirror in front of, if it's conscious, it updates. It has no choice but to look at itself. And that is, I would say, the true aim of meditation, where the person, it was easy to find a mirror for your body, for your physical existence, but to find a mirror for your non-physical attention, You're not call it. I can't say there's no such thing as non-physical consciousness, but there is such a thing as like linguistically it makes sense to say non physical awareness. Do you know? Consciousness is limited to a conditional position. So if you wanted to find a mirror for your mind, Lao Tzu in Taoism, from Taoism, in the Tao Te Ching, has given the algorithm. And so any person on this planet, I would say any conscious being, if you want to see your mind in a mirror, it's inaction, action through inaction, which technically means there is no you, but everything is happening in the moment. That is how you find your mind staring at itself in a mirror. And people usually get to that state, and some even through the religious experience, some through the mystical experience, some even there's something I don't know what it was called. I think it was called Raja Yoga. I could be wrong. Yoga of the intellect. Like that means it's like it's a sort of sight, and it doesn't matter what you use to get to this sight. But once you notice the sight, you've seen the sight. You know. And my welcome everyone. By the way, I'm acknowledging people in the chat section. You know, I see you guys. Don't worry. I'm just saying, really, we are just the evolution of attention beyond patterns that repeat. And when we go into that, you could say, ultimate novelty, we will realize there was no time before there was time. So the timeless existed, had to exist conceptually to us before we could consider time. The timeless is like space. Time is based on the matter changing in space. So technically, space, God is the space where matter is motivated to move. Or I would say Spinoza's God. Which if I had to choose, like, I'd be more closer inclined to Spinoza's God. But for me, language is just, it's like somebody thinking their car can explain why like, you know, why they have a headache. It's like your car has nothing to do with your biological body. So the relationship of mind and body. Let's say put a poetically higher dimensional mind, higher self. Some people call like that. It's not a self. If you think you have a higher self, you don't know what it is. It's not a self. And once it's not a self, if you were to look through those eyes, you would not be a self. You would feel like a liar to yourself when the instant you realize individualism without collectivity cannot be. That means we have literally, by worshiping the individual as an idea, we have left no other choice but to just throughout time just repeat this and get bored and become collective inevitably. So I'm saying we have actually, our ignorance has left us no choice but to move towards clarity. And so that's the thing. If you're unconscious, if you're not aware of your ignorance, I would say, if you're conscious of ignorance, at least you learn something from it. If you're unconscious of it, you never thought it was ignorance from the beginning. Okay, interesting point, I was going to give a talk on this incredible talk, like I've been planning for a while, just taking notes here and there on for it, but it's called The Sober State. And I was meshing in the idea of psychology with actually political value. Like, we have to realize we are animating the world in accordance to not just our genetics, but our choices. Now, those choices are spontaneous. That means whatever you, let's say, deterministic way you see evolution, still the spontaneity of choice is, I would say, weird AF. So what I'm saying is, it doesn't matter if you see a personality to the universe or you don't see a personality to the universe. You are where you start. Do you know? And I don't know how to say it, but pretty much we have to have multidimensional ability. That means either we have to treat nothing has meaning or everything has meaning. If everything has meaning, that means even the illusion has meaning, technically. So it doesn't matter. That means this was kind of like the Lotus Sutra revelation for the Buddha, where they were like, it was a sort of view on the Buddha's passing before the Buddha Mahasamadhi out of here. Like the Buddha, he suddenly, from the Lotus Sutra, in the Lotus Sutra it's depicted like this, where the Buddha suddenly goes into a hysteria. He's like freaking out. The Buddha who's been super peaceful, like this pillar of, you know, I don't know, gentleness at the time of savages or something, you know. And so the Buddha freaks out, and all his disciples are like, "Oh my God, the Buddha's freaking out. They were doomed." And so the Buddha turns around, and the disciples are like, "Why now, Buddha? Why are you freaking out right now when you're about to leave this plane?" You know? And the Buddha's like, "I've made a mistake. We were all enlightened from the beginning." And honestly, that was his last teaching. It wasn't a mistake. He was teaching still, I would say. What it means is a dimension of individualism, a dimension of collectivity, a dimension of just nature is. It's neither collective, neither individual. It can't be accepted or dismissed. It just is. It just is being something. You know what I mean? Like, and it's incredible because you can look at this picture of this waterfall, and it can go into endless words. So that means you could see an instant picture, or each object in this. I could literally. So this is either one thing, this picture, or it's a waterfall, it's a mountain, it's a sky, it's a cloud. Do you see what I mean? So that's literally where all of like how the creature is using language, right? It's language is, you can say, the dividing of image, the dividing of one image. Language is division of image into sound and symbols we give it. And so it's such a cool time because it means if language, let's say there's zero point 0. I mean, I shouldn't even say this. It's very evident. But let's say, on a mainstream level, we realize a language is hollow. That literally means a strange phase of, I would say, attributeless silent witnessing, until, without the human being imposing their knowledge, interactions with the unknown begin. So either we move everything, and we never realize what's out there, or we move a little bit and watch. Imagine somebody's hand. Imagine like this idea of like getting your hand caught in the cookie jar. Imagine like a kid's hand is getting caught in the cookie jar. The parents like, "What are you doing?" You know, you shouldn't eat that. And the kid's like, "I'm getting a cookie for you." And honestly, I feel that's what happens, where human nature has a desire for itself, but at the middle of it, it's like the intelligence of the universal sector is like, human being, what are you doing? And then the human being's like, I'm doing it for you, for the universe. So I'm saying we start off as individuals, and we have the potential to experience an advanced collectivity. Then we close our eyes as individuals, and you know either we go to infinity and beyond, or we return. That's it. That's the only verb I would give. There's no such thing as death, there's just a return. And based on how conscious you are, there's a dash between the E and the T in the word. So you either turn again or you return to the ultimate. And that ultimate is not landscape oriented, because you see, the more you realize yourself as your intelligence being an unconditional space, the less you actually need a body. The less you actually, the mind doesn't need a shape. So you can say metaphysics is technically us wondering, where does physics stop having shape, but yet continuity of some sort occurring still. For some reason, guys, I'm gonna open it up to Q&A, but as an intermission for myself simultaneously. So just random 5-minute Q&A in the middle if anybody has questions. Okay. So guys, the Q&A is there in case if anybody wants me to elaborate something I said before or whatnot. But anyways, pretty much for me, life is like my eyes open. First, a level of design comes. Then with that design, there's space, there's color. And then there's a level of feeling how I feel about the designs I see the instant I see them. So there's a level of feeling, you can say emotions, and then these emotions, they suddenly like a compass. So that means it's like the eyes open, the person sees something, and they that sight echoes in their inner realms as a sort of classified pretty much it's like eyes open, sight is noticed, sight echoes as a subject, subject processed in accordance to attention wondering what else. That means that I find the reason our emotions change is like because we're literally lifting our head above to see beyond like the fence of the ideas we have access in the moment. Yeah. Time, space, and unknown witness. Without time, we can't be subjects. Without space, we can't be objects. And without the witness, there is no distinction between the object and subject for there to even be an experience. That means it's like we need an object to be a subject. We need a subject to be a witness, but the witness doesn't need the subject to be a witness. And guys, it's Saturday here. Would people be interested in Discord, like a morning Discord session? I think probably not, but okay. There's this story which evidently it's ascribed to Christ, and so there was this I don't know if it was there a group of people bring this woman who had committed sin and adultery, right? And they bring it to the prophet Christ, and they say that this woman has to be stoned. Like, that's how the story is. Like, this woman has to be stoned. If I remember correctly, it was like a group of people are like, this woman has sinned. She has to literally be physically stoned with like rocks. Like back in the day, they were savages a bit, right? And so Christ says, okay, but only pick up the rock. Christ says that uh, um, only those are allowed to throw a stone who have never committed a sin. And one by one, all these people who had judged one person for the sin, for her sin, in some sense they all realized they had made sins. It's like this. It's like in these modern times where you see it, like a lot of comedians are being crushed by the weight of like how their audience expects them to be. Do you know? Like, but they don't realize it's like we are, because by not being perfect, it's kind of like we have to be tolerant, or the mind has an ability to endlessly see, to endlessly create inefficiency or endlessly perceive efficiency. I'm telling you. That means if you dislike someone and you really don't care for them, do you know how easy it is to have stories of hatred, Pura? You know? And so really, it's like an advanced communicator would always see additional dimensions, rather than, you can always add a dimension. You can always add a dimension. But it's as if like we're seeing good and bad, but because everybody's DNA is like unique, technically it's never the same good and bad. You know? So nobody threw the stone, in the story, if you're asking. Guys, I'm simultaneously responding to the chat section. People who don't see the chat section, they're like, oh my god, Mr. Within's talking to the beyond. I'm just vocally responding to the chat section sometimes, guys. Keep that in mind. Yeah, it's just that we have to treat human psychology like we're all in a Venetian masquerade. Like literally nobody's true face is visible. Because our true face is not even something that's an object. It's a momentum, it's the inspiration of how we're subject to ourselves, So anyways, guys, the story was very significant. It was like pointing to how we all have a dimension where everybody was a child. So technically it doesn't matter, even if you're like the most savage UFC fighter, you still have memories of your childhood. you know and so that means it's like we actually, our childhood, our memories never get forgotten. They become us through behavior. And by the way, it's like it's like, I don't know how to tell you guys this, but it's that getting really close to the end of the talk. It's like really, really close, But here, I thought of a topic for the Discord session after. I thought we can talk about Okay, I'll share it in the Discord, whatever. Um, Fixed ideological systems behave like self-replicating genes, similar to how in religious ideology it's a passing down of a narrative, or in various systems there's a passing down of a narrative. Uh, all ideological systems eventually they change or will be changed. That means, think of it this way. Think of it that all those people who feel like truth has to be in one story, if imagine extinction happens. Imagine at some point people die. It's like all the beliefs even the person has held, only the direct experience remains, you know? So anyways, guys, I hope this episode was helpful. And I really feel ideas are behaving like genes. And there's something there that our psychology could be somehow animating how the physiology is behaving. You know, it could be echoing in an animated behavioral way the physiology that somehow it has managed to observe. So imagine like the brain before the person being conscious, but the brain was conscious of the body. The body has so many different functions that it's automatically an awareness to multidimensionality. So we can say we had access to an invisible multidimensional context just by the nature of our body being so unique and different. So what that means is before the it's like the brain before looking at the outer realms, having a sort of internal crafted, internal sculpted. Pretty much it puts its foot, like our attention puts its foot in space, then puts its foot in matter. So that's what I mean. The brain is realizing it's multidimensional. The multidimensional and the void are there. So you can say it's like 0 infinity, then it becomes 0 1, then it becomes 0 2, then it eventually comes back to 0 infinity. So technically the 0 is there. The 0 doesn't go anywhere because it has a value. It doesn't have a value. It's technically something that doesn't have a value can be all value. It has the potentially has the all value, you know. So anyways, guys, thanks for listening. I'll be on the Discord, and why not, I'll share the topic. I thought of maybe a topic if people are interested. Okay, thanks for listening. I'll see the viewers on Discord. Namaste.